And now I'd like to turn it over to our awesome cataloging team, Yumi, Margaret, and Kirsten.
So we're gonna start the basic cataloging support training. And let me introduce ourselves. I'm Yumi Choi. I'm a senior cataloging librarian, and I'm doing English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean original cataloging, WCP records update, and more.
Hi, everybody. I'm Margaret Rose O'Keefe, the Cataloging and Special Projects Librarian at the Buckles office. I take care of your Cat Express import, and Yumi is my backup when I'm not around, of course, but I also do e-content cataloging and other projects for cleaning up the database.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Fagerland. I'm the cataloging librarian. I handle the WCP import and most languages other than English or CJK original cataloging. And I also work on database cleanup projects and back up the other catalogers when they're away and other duties as assigned.
Okay, that's us. So let's start with the Buckles cataloging workflow. So when you order your items from your vendors, and if the vendors are the OCLC collection partners, such as Baker & Taylor and Ingram, then when your orders are shipped at the moment of that, those are shipped, your short bit records for those items will be delivered to our OCLC collection manager file, the MARC file, which means the short bit records means incomplete records. Although they are incomplete records, it's gonna be helpful for us. So we are doing this, and once the short bit records of you, the items that you ordered arrived in OCLC collection manager, catalogers go there and fetch the file, and we do the process during the batch edit, and we import the short bit records in our Buckles, Polaris, and LIP database. And the catalogers are monitoring those records in a specific record set, and we monitor if there's complete records available later. And if the complete records are available, we replace those short bit records with the complete records later. That's the first way. And the second way is your traditional way. So you go to Cat Express and search the records for your items. And if you find complete records there, you save the records in Cat Express for Cat Express. Then later, catalogers go to Cat Express and fetch the MARC file, and we do batch edit. We process your records. We do review. Then we import the records in the LIP and Polaris. The third way, if you can find any available records in Cat Express, then you just submit the cataloging justification for the original cataloging. Then catalogers will create a new record for you. Those are three ways you ask for your records for your items. And I mentioned about shortly about batch edit. During the batch edit, we just check each record. We go over each record, and if we just check if those records meets Buckles minimum criteria, or if those records are comply with the Buckles policies and procedure, we do that during the batch edit. Okay. So for those records which doesn't meet the Buckles minimum criteria and need original cataloging, or those are not comply with the Buckles policies and procedures, if you want them to be in the database, we need your directors or your directors designated assignees cataloging submission justification form, which will be more explained by Kirsten later. Okay, I shortly mentioned about WCP records, which means OCLC's WorldCat cataloging partners collection records. OCLC cataloging partners are such as Baker & Taylor and Ingram. So if your vendors are those WorldCat cataloging partners, then when you order your items and when the items are shipped, the short bit records are automatically sent to Buckle's collection manager account, and catalogers go there and fetch the short bit records. Although those are short bit records, it's much faster. We can import those short bit records much faster. And if those are records available in the LIP or Polaris, patrons can place their holds faster. So this is very passionate service. Catalogers monitor those short bit records, and then we just regularly check OCLC if there's complete records for those short bit records are available. If the complete records are available, we replace the short bit records with a better one. If you are not participating this WCP records, please contact us, and then we're gonna set up your account for this service. Okay, so this is an example of WCP records in LIP. So first one, after this training, you will just know this is not a record as soon as you see this first screen there, because everything's are uppercase. The title, author, and even publisher information is incomplete. So you think something's weird if somebody else make mistake or something. So you are curious, so you click it, and when you see the detailed view, you found the 590 field at the bottom, which explains that this is WCP records and this is incomplete and will be updated by cataloger when the complete records are available. So this is an example of WCP records. Okay, so before we go to the CAT Express training, there's a huge announcement which already sent to via Buckle's Tech Service Group. As soon as log on to CAT Express, the first page, you will find this message. This is true, and then as we already informed you, we are working on a new workflow with OCLC now, and then we are just working for the smooth transition from CAT Express to Record Manager. It's gonna be happen next April, so you don't need to worry about now, and we'll let you know when we are ready. So for now, you can just use CAT Express as usual, and this was like announced via Buckle's Tech Service Group, and there's another way we catalogers communicate with you. There's a cataloging account. Each library has their own cataloging account, which looks like cataloging at your library name.buckles.org. So if you are from Allendale, it should be cataloging at allendale.buckles.org. So this email accounts, we just use this email account for communicating your library specific issues. For example, the record you submitted to CAT Express is not complying with Buckle's policy and procedure. We just notify you that we are not gonna import your record because it's not following the policy and procedures. Those kind of informations we just give you through your library's cataloging account. So if you are newly hired, and if you don't know if you're getting this email, or just you know how to get this email, you can ask your director for the password, or just set up forwarding to your email. Or if your library staff has no access to this account, please ask your director to contact us. We're gonna share information with your director. And Tech Service Group, I just shortly mentioned about it. Catalogers use this group for cataloging related announcements, and your library's cataloging accounts are all included in this group. So if your library cataloging accounts are forwarding to you, you should get information or like emails, announcement from this Tech Service Group. So if there's a way how to join, explained there. So go to this link, Google groups, google.com, all groups, and just select Focus Technical Service, and then join the group. Okay, let's start CAD Express search. So before you search, please bear in mind, please don't forget to set the language of cataloging limiter as English. This will be gone when you log out. So whenever you log in, please don't forget to set it up. So let's see if you don't set it up. If you forget to set the cataloging limiter, then you will see all different language. You will see all different search results like this. So that means cataloging language Chinese, cataloging language Germany. That means that WorldCat, as you can assume that all of the world libraries, all of the world participate in WorldCat. And for example, Chinese libraries catalog their items in Chinese for their people who speak Chinese. And Swedish people catalog their cataloging records in Swedish to serve their Swedish speaking people. So those cataloging limiter means that the cataloging language is not the material language in material itself. The description is in those languages. So if you don't set the cataloging limiter as English, you will see all the records from all over the world, which is cataloged in their own languages. And this is an example of the search result when you forget to set the limiter. And this is a detailed record. If you don't set the limiter, it is the screen you will see. So in this record, as you can see, it's Slovenian, not English. So physical description, instead of page, you will see some Slovenian language for the page. And then if you see the subject headings, the language is not English. So this is not for our patrons. This is something for the Slovenian speaking people. So please don't forget to set the limiter. And your patrons will be very sad if you just import this kind of records. Okay, so when you set the language of cataloging limiter as English, this is a record you want to find, and then your patrons will be happy with. So as you can see, physical description, it's one volume. Actually, it should have exact pages. It's not complete, but at least the catalog descriptions in English. And the subject headings, you can see all the subject headings are in English. So the catalog descriptions are in English, and this is the one we want to see. So please don't forget to set the catalog limiter as English. Okay, then how about the materials, the language of the material, not the cataloging language. The language of the material is not English or any Roman language. So this is an example of those records. The first one, this is from CAD Express. As you can see, everything is Romanized, the Roman title, but there's no vernacular scripts at all. For example, this is a very famous movie from Korea, Gi생충 in Korean and Parasite in English. So as you can see, the title, it's like a romanization of Gi생충 in Korean. There's no Korean script. But as you can see from the record manager record on the right side, this is a record in Korean. So as you can see, the title is in Korean, and the author, there's like actors and directors' name in Korean. This is a record we want to have in our database. Unfortunately, CAD Express cannot handle non-Roman scripts. So if you want to import the records, which is the materials language is not Roman language, then please don't use CAD Express and please use Record Manager. And if you don't know how to set up Record Manager and how to use Record Manager, please contact us. Okay, so let's begin with the Cat Express basic search. We always recommend you to search with your standard number, such as ISBN UPC and ISSN for serials. Standard number is something like a social security number for us. So it's like a unique identification number for materials. So if you know the standard number, please search by standard number. And if you don't know the standard number, there's another way, option keyword search and title phrase search. But we always recommend you to search with the standard number. And again, please don't forget to set the cataloging limiter. Okay, when you don't know the standard number, but if you know certain criteria for your search, then you can use advanced search. Here, the example is that title is Harry Potter and the narrator is Jim Dale, and you want anything published in United Kingdom, so you can exclude the publisher location in United Kingdom. And again, you have to set the language of catalog limiter as English to get the records for us, for your patrons here. And you can also, in advanced search, you can sort result by these things, date, title, and author. And also you can limit your search by publication date or record format. It's a sound recording or an ebook or printed material. You can just limit here, limit format here. And also you can limit your search by language. Here the language is the material language, not the cataloging language. So if you want a Harry Potter audiobook narrated in Korean, you can just set the language here Korean, but I don't know if Jim Dale can narrate in Korean. But anyway, you can just limit by search. You can use that limit by search here in advanced search. Okay, for the advanced search result, this is the search result for the advanced search we just looked at. So as you can see, there's all different things are going on here. So the first one, PCC, means that PCC libraries are the very good libraries who are participating in all the cataloging policy making and the cataloging rule making in Library of Congress. So whenever you see PCC, that means it can be a good record. You know, the PCC and LC, which is Library of Congress. So if you see the LC there, that means this record created by Library of Congress. They considered as a good records, but sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes the record has like an error, but in general, we consider those records are very good quality, has very good quality. So when you see all like a multiple search result, and if you can see PCC or LC, please select those. Of course, you have to compare the records, but they are relatively good. And here's another thing in BRG. That means if you see in BRG in your search result, that means the record is already in LIP or Polaris or just selected by one of our member libraries. If you see in BRG, but the record is not in Polaris, there can be like several cases, but one of the cases is that one of the member library just selected the record and then save it to catalog. So it's the library set the holding. So it's in BRG now, but cataloger didn't catch the file and then they didn't process it yet. So it's not in LIP or Polaris. So if you see in BRG, that means it's already in the Dockers database, or it will be in next one day or like in next 24 to 48 hours. So if you see in BRG, you don't need to save to catalog the record again. But if you see in BRG, but you didn't see the record in Polaris or LIP after 48 hours, then please report it to us. We'll take care of it. Okay, so you find your good records from Cat Express. Then the next thing you need to do is save to catalog. So if you find the record and you see some more options on the top, there's an export only and save to catalog, but please don't even think about click export only, because that only saves the record to the institutional file. It doesn't set the holding. So if you click save to catalog, that does two things at once. It set the buckle's holding in WorldCat record, and also it saved this record to our institutional file. So please always click save to catalog and don't do export only. So other member libraries can see somebody else already saved this record to the institutional file, and catalogs will process it soon. So please remember to save to catalog. Okay, so when you click the save to catalog, this is the screen you will see. It says cataloging successful. That means your record successfully saved to the institutional file. That doesn't mean that if you click the save to catalog, it goes to right away to the buckle's database somehow magically. It doesn't mean that. So that means your records are saved successfully, and catalogers has to go there and then get the file and then have to do review and process your file, your records, and then import. So it will take at least 24 hours and a maximum 48 hours. So if you don't see your records next day, please wait 1 or 2 days. And then if you don't see it after those period of time, then please report us. We'll take care of it. So, okay. So now it's time to learn how you to select records from Kirsten.
Thank you, Yumi. I will go ahead and share my screen with you, and I'll go through it, demonstrate the different criteria you need for selecting good records. Bear with me 1 second, please. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through some ways to find good criteria for selecting good and complete bib records, whether you're searching in Cat Express or Record Manager. So this chart here is the minimum criteria that we look for in a complete bibliographic record. And I've got the main entry is first. You'll see in the mark tag, those will be in the 1XX fields. So that covers the author's name, corporate name, if it's a company or a group author, or the composer's name for a musical work. And then we have the title statement in the 245 field. That includes the title of the work, the author's name, any illustrators or other contributors, directors or composers for films or for music, etc. And the imprint information is the publication information in the 260 or 264 fields. That includes a statement about the publication location, the name of the publisher, and the publication date. And then we've got the physical description in the 300 field. That covers the pagination, if it's got Roman numeral pages or standard numbered pages, and then illustrations, black or white or color, and film descriptions, so sound, color, or black and white films, and then the dimensions of either books or discs. Books will usually be measured in centimeters, while discs will usually be measured in inches. And then the most important one we have is the subject added entries. So we use Library of Congress subject headings in the 6XX fields in MARC, and they'll have the second indicator 0 most of the time. Sometimes you will see second indicator 1. I think Margaret will show an example of that later. But for the most part, they'll have the second number next to them will be 0. So that's how you know that the headings are from the Library of Congress. If there's another number there, that's how you know it's from a different source. So I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a couple minutes. The 6XX fields contain subjects, concepts, people in biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, things of that nature, corporate names for bands or organizations. Meeting name is for conferences or expeditions like Lewis and Clark's expedition, or events like the Olympics. And then geographic names are for settings, for novels, things like that, and travel guide locations. So as long as there is one of these, at least one of these 6XX fields in the records that you find, that's considered a good sign. And I just have a note about the 655 field, which is for genre and form terms. It's slightly different from the rest of the 6XX fields. These are good to see, and you'll probably find them in a lot of your records, but on their own, they're not enough to make a complete record. They tell us what's kind of item it is and its physical characteristics, but not what the item is about. Okay, so this is an example of for an incomplete record, I'm sorry. This is an incomplete record in Cat Express. See, we've got on the left, we have the text display here, which is a simplified view of the record. And on the right, we have the mark display. So you can see all the different numbered fields I mentioned earlier, along with a few other fields. So the first thing that I notice about this record is that the title field, the author field, and the publication information field are partly in uppercase instead of normal sentence case like you would see in a complete record. There's also no physical description over here in the mark view in the 300 field. It's not here at all. And there are no 6XX fields for subject headings. So this is our cataloger's faces when we see a record like this. Now this is an example of a complete record. So as you can see on the left, we have text display again. It has a lot more information here, and everything's correctly capitalized and in normal sentence case. On the right, and we have the mark display again, and we see the minimum required fields that we're looking for. We have the 100 field with the author's name, and we have the title statement in 245. We have the 264 field here with publication location, publisher's name and the date, and the 300 field with the Roman numeral pages, the standard numbers pages, illustrations, and the dimensions. And then most importantly, we've got the 6XX fields down on the bottom. The 600 fields are for the subject of the memoir. So in this case, it's the author and her daughter. And then we also have 650s with the subjects of the book. And on Cat Express, you'll be able to view this in the mark display, and you'll be able to scroll down, but the screenshot wasn't quite big enough to show all the subject headings. So over here in the text display, you can see that there's more down below. So Margaret will demonstrate how this works in a few minutes. Okay, so here are a few record selection tips that you'll need to know when you're looking for a record in Cat Express or a record manager. The best thing to search for is the ISBN, the ISSN if it's a serial, or the UPC for media. If your item falls under any of these categories here, then we'll have to ask you for a justification form since they don't comply with Buckle's catalog submissions policy. The link here, which we'll share with you in the slides later on, goes to the page with the full list of items on Buckles Connect. These items that we won't accept or that will require justification before we add them to the catalog. So what if you can't find a record in Cat Express or in Record Manager? If there is no record, you can always send us a ticket on the Buckles support page in Buckles Connect. If your item doesn't comply with Buckles policy, then you can ask your director or your director's designated appointee to send us an original cataloging request or a cataloging submission justification form. Items that are self-published or indie published will also require justification. For anything that's not released yet, or for that's newly released, sometimes it's best to wait a week or two before you submit a ticket. There's always a chance that a new or more complete record will be added during that time. But if you have any submissions that are patron requests or that are related to an author event in your library, we'll prioritize those requests. Okay, so I'm going to go over the different support tickets you can send us if you need help with any cataloging issues. The Add ISBN UPC form covers paperback editions, for example, if they have the same street date and the same dimensions, the same page numbers as the hardcover edition. Sometimes publishers release them both together. So we can add those to a hardcover record if they're already, if they're released at the same time. But this covers paw prints editions, follet bound or turtleback, any other library binding editions also. And then the database error form is for any editing suggestions you have in a bib record. For example, if you find a typo in the title, or if you have, or the summary, if you have a question about the author's name, or if the cover image doesn't match the item you have in your hand, you can send us this form. But if it is related to a missing ISBN or UPC, you can use the form for Add ISBN UPC instead. And the linking form is for any questions you have about linking your item record to a bibliographic record. If you're not sure which record you should link your item to, or if you exported something, a record from Cat Express and you don't see it in the catalog yet, please send us your question with this form. Just another friendly reminder that if you see an ISBN or UPC that's missing, please use the Add ISBN UPC form instead. And lastly, on this page, we have the OCLC records form. So if you were looking for a record in Cat Express or Record Manager and you're not sure which one you should choose, because both of them look like they might be good, please send us this form and we'll advise you. Okay, and lastly, we have the original cataloging request form. Oh, apologies. And if you can't find any record for your item at all, or if it doesn't comply with the Buckles catalog submissions policy that we mentioned before, please use this form and we'll, if you have an item that's self-published, for example, by a local author and you really want to add it to your collection, we'll be happy to add it for you, but we need justification from your director or from the designated appointee. And we have a list here that goes to Buckles Connect about the catalog submissions policy and all the information required to submit materials for cataloging. We usually have a minimum criteria for information that we need in order to create a record from scratch. The buckle stamp you can use, that you used to use for paper copies, some of you might remember that, is a good way to send that to us. So we usually require an ISBN or UPC, publication or copyright date, pagination, any illustrations there might be, if it's part of a series, etc. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Margaret now, and she will demonstrate how Cat Express searching works.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what we do in Cat Express for all this stuff. I am going to share my second screen. There we go. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. I am in Cat Express, and the first thing we're going to do is search for an example of a record that is not cataloged in English. So we can see that Yumi showed an example, but we're going to actually do the search right now. I'm going to paste the ISBN into the search field. And you notice that I just clicked search at the top and went to the basic search. It's automatically set to search by standard number, so we're going to keep it at that. And in this case, I'm not going to apply the limiter, and you're going to see what the difference is when you do that search. So I'll click search, and I'm going to get 3 results here. The first one you can see is cataloged in English because it says here ENG. That's how you can tell. And the second record in the list is cataloged in Slovenian. You might not know what SLV stands for, but that's what it stands for. But you can see that it's not English. You can see that it's not ENG. So the second record would not be one we would want to select. And then the third record is cataloged in English as well. You can see the ENG. So let's just take a look at that second record to see what it looks like. Yumi gave you a brief preview of it, but let's take a look. We'll click on that record. We'll go to the mark display by clicking on mark display here at the top. Change it from text display to mark display. And then you can see here, right at the top, one of your other indicators is in the 040 field. You can see the subfield B here says SLV. So that's right away you could tell if you didn't catch it the first time. Now you can see, okay, this one's cataloged in Slovenian, or at least not in English because it doesn't say ENG. But if you missed that too, you could scroll down here. These qualifiers, they're called qualifiers next to the ISBNs, are describing what type of item this is. Maybe it's hardcover or paperback, but as you can see, that's not in English. So somebody looking at this record in our catalog would not be able to tell what type of items those are: hardcover, paperback, trade paperback, whatever the case may be. I'm going to keep scrolling down, and you can see in the 240 field, the language field, subfield L, the language that's being described is not in English either. That should say English. It's being translated into English. But it says that in Slovenian. It keeps scrolling. You can see in the 300 field where it should say something like pages or P with a dot after it. In some cases, that's saying STR. That's for something in the Slovenian language describing pages. And then this note in the 500 field is describing something about the item, and that's also not in English. You can even see some of these 600 fields, even though they wouldn't be fields that we would keep because the second indicator here is not a 0. So they're not Library of Congress subject headings, but you can see that they are representing these subject headings in a different language as well. So there's many, many indicators here letting you know that this is not the record to select. This is not cataloged in English. So we would not select this record. Let's go back to our search results by clicking search results here. And you can see the top one, a little bit odd looking, I guess. And you can see that it's also all in capitalization. So as Yumi mentioned, the caps can be an indicator that it's not a good record either. So you would probably select the third record on this list. It's cataloged in English, and that, excuse me, that looks like more of a complete record. We'll get into what a complete record looks like a little bit later on though. So we'll go back to the search and we'll look at another example. So the second search I'm going to do is going to be an example of when your item itself may be cataloged in English, but it's in a language that is not a Roman language. So we're still going to apply the language of the cataloging limiter as English, as Yumi recommended. And then we're going to paste the ISBN in here and do our search. So as you can see in this record, the 040 field, subfield B, does say English. So we're good to go on that score. But in this case, if I scroll down, I can see that this record, actually, before I scroll down, I will point out just a fun fact. It's not something you would necessarily have to be used to looking at, but your 008 field here is going to tell you what language this is, the material is in, not that it's cataloged in. The material itself, the language of the item, is Korean. You could see the on the right hand side of the 008 field it says KOR. So that's the material itself is in Korean. But as you could scroll down, you're going to see some of this transliteration or romanization of the Korean language. Because Cat Express can't display the vernacular script, actual Korean characters, it's just romanizing this for us to give an approximation of what that would sound like in Korean. So you're going to see a lot of these are romanized, but what we actually want is the Korean script in this record. So this record is not complete enough. This needs to be submitted using Record Manager so we can see the Korean script. So you want to avoid things like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Hebrew, Russian, those languages. You want to avoid submitting them in Cat Express because we're just going to send it back to you and ask you to put it through in Record Manager instead. So I'm going to go back to the search and we're going to point out another thing to keep an eye out for, and that's those online resources. So I'm going to paste this ISBN in. Again, from now on, I'm going to keep that cataloging limiter to English because we know we want only records that are cataloged in English. So I'll do that search. And I can see here the first result is the extent here is one online resource. So that's telling us that this is not a physical item, as opposed to the second one that says 31 pages, color illustrations. Even though this online resource says 31 pages, color illustrations, it's preceded by online resource. So you could tell that that's actually an online resource and not the physical item, which will only say pages, illustrations, and centimeters. Even the third one, you can probably tell it's a little bit of an incomplete record just by glancing at this brief display, but this one even says at least 32 pages. You can tell it's a physical item. So let's just look in the, if you missed that and you did click on this record anyway, let's look at what that looks like. So something, again, you're not necessarily meant to be acclimated to, but these fields at the top, you're going to see some extra fields that you wouldn't have seen if it were a print record. Then you're scrolling down, you're seeing in the 020 field where the ISBNs are, that qualifier says that it's an electronic book. That's another hint to you that this is not the record to select. You even see overdrive here listed in the 037 field. You can see again in the 300 field, that online resource. You can see in the 337 field, it says computer, whereas it wouldn't say that in an actual book record. And then the online resource is repeated here in the 338 field. And then sometimes you'll see even in the bottom here, you'll sometimes see electronic books in a 655 field as well. So all of those are indicators to you that this is not a physical item. This is an online resource. Even here at the bottom, these 856 fields have overdrive listed everywhere. So you can tell this is not the record to select. So you'd go back to your search results and you'd probably select this PCC record, but fun fact, BRG is indicating to us that it's already in Buckles in the catalog. So we actually wouldn't select that, but let's, I'm skipping ahead to my next example. So let's go back and get to my next example where we can see that. So here's an example of when the record is in BRG in our catalog. So as Yumi said, there's two possibilities for that. I'm going to click search and you can see here's that same record, but you'll notice I searched a different ISBN. If you were really keen with your vision, you could see that the ISBN changed when I searched this. So this is a different ISBN, but the same record came up again. It says PCC, so it's a good record. We can rely on that being a complete record, but it also says in BRG. So here I'm going to, and again, these two records with the capitalization, you can tell already those are not going to be complete records. You barely need to even look at them, but you could just to verify. But this first record that looks like a complete record, I'm going to click on it. The ISBN that I searched ended in 2717. So that's this top ISBN, the paperback ISBN. So this is saying that it's in BRG. However, if I search in Polaris for this record, I'm just going to do a quick search. It's not there when I search. It's not there at all. So what are the possibilities here? So at the top, it does say BRG Holdings. That's another indicator that it's in our catalog. It'll say that at the top, BRG Holdings. So there's two possibilities. This could have recently been selected by somebody else in the system. So another library has the same item. They just submitted it today to us. So you wouldn't want to submit that again because it's already been submitted to us. The other possibility, however, and it's something to be aware of because as Kirsten was saying, when you use the support forms,
there is an option to add a paperback ISBN to a hardcover record. So that is the other possibility here, that this hardcover ISBN is actually the one, and that's actually the one I searched prior to the search when we were looking at the online resource example. And we might have this ISBN in our catalog. It just doesn't have that paperback ISBN attached to it. So let's take a look at that and see if that's the case. And sure enough, here's the hardcover record in our catalog with just the hardcover ISBN and not the paperback ISBN. So you might think, okay, well, I'll just submit this record and it'll get in. Not necessarily the case. And this actually has been an example that we've used because it has happened. This paperback ISBN does not have the same publication information, the same dates, the same publisher and all that as the hardcover ISBN. So even though it's a PCC record, like Yumi said, they're not perfect. They can make mistakes sometimes. They can combine things that shouldn't be combined. So in this case, you wouldn't submit this record because it is already in Polaris without the paperback ISBN. You would submit the request to add an ISBN, the support form, and then we would write back and say, actually, this ISBN can't be added to this record because it's not the same publication information. We need a separate record for this one. If we go back to the search results, yes, we do have separate records here for this paperback ISBN, but they are sadly very incomplete records. We wouldn't accept these records anyway, even though they are exclusively for the paperback ISBN. In this case, we need the justification form filled out so we can do the original cataloging for that paperback edition of this title. Let's go back to, and I can look at this one just so you can see, it's the same case. It has some of the requirements for a complete record, but as Yumi pointed out, all this uppercase immediately tells you that even if you weren't able to read this 008 field well, is incomplete. And this doesn't have a 300 field. Like there's a few indicators that you can see here that tell you it's not a complete record. So let's go back to the search and look at another example of an incomplete record, just to really illustrate this point. I'm going to do another search by ISBN, and here at the top you can see, you probably already guessed, all caps, it's going to be an incomplete record, but let's just take a look. Open the record. You can see here it's got the most of the information you might want, but the capitalization is giving it away. It's not going to be a complete record, but let's just keep looking. The 300 field is there, even though it just says one volume. The 655 field is present, but as Kirsten described earlier, 655s are not enough to make a complete record. Those are only genre terms. They say that this is a certain type of book, but it doesn't say what this one in particular is about itself. So this is not going to be enough to be a complete record. This is an incomplete record. If you go back to the search results, you can probably guess that this one, being that of course it's already in BRG, this record is going to be the one you would choose if it wasn't already in BRG. This one's a much more complete record, but I do have an example of a complete record at the end as well, so I won't go into too much detail on that. We'll continue on with our next search, and again, we're really beating this point, like beating a dead horse, right? We're providing many examples of these complete records just so you really get used to what records you're going to avoid. And the reason I say that is because we might as well not waste everybody's time and have you select these records, and then we have to compose a ticket to send it back to you and say that we didn't accept it, and then you have to try again. You might as well not, like, get acclimated to what's a complete record and what's not, so you don't even select these records and waste that time back and forth with us. You can get used to just going and submitting a support ticket for the original cataloging when you can't find the complete record. So this first one, of course, we're going to avoid. It says online resource. We're used to that already, and we can skip right over it. The next one you can see here, again, there's that capitalization in the title. This is likely not to be a complete record, but let's take a look. So we're scrolling through, And it looks like this is a pretty complete record. This one is probably going to trick most people because it looks like it has a lot of information, but there's a few things here that just let us know it's not quite complete. Again, the 008 field, not something you guys are going to be used to looking at. We as catalogers can tell right away there's missing information there. So your indicator, you don't need to be able to recognize that in those fields, but your indicator is going to be this capitalization. And you can say to yourself, okay, I see that the author field and this title field are in all caps. I can pretty much tell that that's not going to be a complete record. And this publisher place is not identified. The publication information is in all caps as well. Even though it does have subject headings, those other indicators are going to let you know not to select this record for saving to the catalog. I'll go back to the search and we're going to see one more example. This one is going to be an example of where there's not a required field present, but you also will notice that in this case, the second record, this first record is probably okay, and you might already be used to indicators of what's a good record by now to tell me, okay, you're going to, of course, pick the first record, but I do want to illustrate why you wouldn't pick the second record again. So we're going to click the second record. And here you might think, okay, the capitalization is there, but easy enough for them to change that, right? It has subject headings, it has even a summary, which is a bonus. And in this case, you'll notice the 300 field is missing. So you want to keep an eye out for all those required fields, but that is certainly one of them that Kirsten described as the Buckles minimum criteria. So in this case, it has no 300 field. So even though you might think this would be an easy record to clean up, or that it's mostly complete and that it would be fine to import into the catalog, this is not a complete record, and we would be sending this back to you as well. So again, those caps can a lot of times be it. All caps in those fields can be an indicator. If we go back to the search results, yes, you could tell that this record is probably going to be the complete one. It has most of what you need. I will point out that even though Kirsten did say that the 650 fields, those subject headings, need to have a second indicator of 0 to be Library of Congress subject headings, there is one sort of exception, so to speak. When you have a 1 here, we as catalogers are going to change that to a 0 for you, and we're going to add juvenile fiction here instead of fiction. So you don't have to worry that it has a 1. You can rely on us changing that to a 0 once we get it to you. So just be aware that yes, 0 is ultimately going to be required for us to catalog it, but we can handle a 1 because we know that that's actually the children's catalog, the Library of Congress cataloging subject headings for children. So we can handle that. Anything else besides that is just not going to be valid at all. So let's go back to our search and look at another example where we are missing other fields besides the 300 field. So in this case, I'll search for this ISBN. I can see you probably already know, okay, online resource, we're going to skip this one. The second one is purely a physical material record, and it's PCC, so we would probably pick this one. But I'm just going to show you an example of why you would not pick the third record. So I'll click on the third record, and in this case, you can see it has kind of an odd 245. It's got the beginning of the title at the end. So you see that it has antiquity affair, comma, the. That's not how you normally see title statements made. So that one's already odd looking, and we usually have the author in a subfield C in the 245 field at the end here before the period. So you might already have noticed that this is not very complete, but we're missing the publication place. We only have the publisher and the publishing year. The 300 is present, so that's good. But something you would not necessarily realize here, the 336 and 337 fields are actually also required, not just the 338, but that's something that the catalogers would pick up on more than you might. But you can see right away, it skips right over to a 700 field. for whoever this is, an illustrator, an added author. We don't know, it's not qualified here. And there's no subfield C in the 245 to tell us what it is. But the most important piece here is that there's only a 700, and in between here, there's no 600, 650, 651, what have you, the subject heading field. So this has no subject headings, and we would not choose this record for other reasons besides that. If you look at the 008, it's very weird looking. You might notice that without even being a cataloger, but this record would not be accepted, mostly because of the fact that it has no subject headings, but for a few other reasons as well. So we can go back to search results, and yes, you would probably be picking the second record, but because it says it's in BRG, you would actually be looking in Polaris first, and excuse me, you'd be seeing if it was there, or if it wasn't, you would be waiting on the understanding that somebody else might have already saved it to the catalog today, and it would be in pretty soon after that. So let's go back to the search, and we'll look at one more example. Sometimes, we did already talk about this a little bit, but sometimes there are subject headings there, and this example just came in recently, and I'm glad it did because it helps me describe this a little bit better. In this case, I have two records. The second one has all caps, so I probably already know not to pick that one, but let's look at both of them. The first one here has a lot of information, so it looks like, okay, that second one was all caps, but maybe this first one is actually a good record to choose. I'm scrolling through, I see it has a 300 field, I see it has publication information, even though it doesn't have the place of publication. I do see it's missing the date of publication in the 264 field, so that's a little bit of a alert to me, but maybe you could think, okay, they could pull the date from the 008 field and put 2023 because it's listed there. But if you keep scrolling down, you'll see that this record has 650s with a second indicator of 7. It also tells you at the end in the subfield 2 where these subject headings came from. So they're not from the Library of Congress. You can tell that because of those two aspects of the subject heading. And this one, in fact, has no Library of Congress subject headings. So these would all be stripped out in the batch editing. And by the time it got to us, we would see no subject headings at all, because all of these would come out being that they're not from the Library of Congress. So you would not select this record for that reason. You can go back to your search results, and you could go to the second record, even though by now you're thinking all caps, I can almost immediately exclude this record. And sure enough, this record has some missing information that we would not add. It has 2 authors crammed into the 100 field, all in caps. Again, the title's in all caps. It's missing the publication information, the place of publication information here. So this one is also incomplete, yet in different ways than the other record is. So this one would be one where you would want to go and fill out the cataloging justification form, so we could either clean up one of these records for you or create a record from scratch. Probably we would be cleaning up one of these records and fleshing it out and making it more complete. So we can go back to the search and look at another example of something that would also not be added to our catalog because of different reasons. If we search this ISBN, you can see you get quite a bit of results here. Do pay attention to the top of your screen. It only displays the first 10 records when you do a search. So if it says something more than 10 at the top, in this case 17, you do want to go to the second page as well to look at your results. So in this case, I'll first scroll through the top 10 results, and then we'll go to the second page. So notice that there are all different years, in some cases, all different types of information here, different pagination, different formats. You can see there's 1987, 1967, 1997. Here's an online resource you're going to automatically skip. And you have 30 pages, 40 pages, you have large print. So in this case, you want to know exactly which record you're searching for, of course. What do you have in hand? What's the year of the book that's in your hand? What's the pagination of it? What are the dimensions, ideally, to really narrow down your search? Because as you're seeing, all these records have different information inside them. This one here says in BRG, so this might be the case of that last example we looked at, where one of these ISBNs is in our catalog, but maybe not the one you're looking for. So you want something that represents your item. So if we take a look at this one that says in BRG and we click on it, obviously you're going to do a search in Polaris first, and if your ISBN is there, you're going to just link to the record. But if you search Polaris, it's not there, you're going to look at this record and think to yourself, okay, my ISBN is here, so I might as well, this is a good record. It says in BRG, somebody's already selected it at some point in time, so it must be a good record. Let's export this record. Let's save this record to the catalog, not export. We don't want to use export. That's right. Yumi told us that. In this case, if you selected this record, we would automatically send it back because this has several ISBNs attached to it. There's no way for us to know which ISBN you have, and we would never add a record to our catalog that has this many ISBNs because these do not all represent the New York published Scholastic book from 1987 with 40 pages. There's absolutely no way all of these were published at that time by that publisher. And I'm not going to sit here and search for each one of them, but you can tell yourself if you were to go search these, they would be all different publication dates and publishers. So this is not something we would add to the catalog as is. But let's go back to the search results. And let's just take a look. We would eliminate the online resource. If we don't have a large print, we'd eliminate the large print. We'd eliminate the ones that are from different years. And then we'd go to the next page and we'd look here and we see different years. We even see 2013 online resource. We'd eliminate that. We even see a Wonder Book because Wonder Books often have the print ISBN sort of hidden in the record as well. And another Wonder Book here. So if you had the Wonder Book, you would be searching for the Wonder Book ISBN, not the print book ISBN. So you can eliminate those records as well because they're for the Wonder Book. So in this case, you'd want to find a record that just describes your item. And if the record that describes your item happens to have several ISBNs attached to it and is already in our catalog, you would go back to Kirsten's advice and you would use the add ISBN support form and ask that we add your ISBN to the existing record rather than submit a record to us with a bunch of ISBNs on it that we're just going to send back. Okay, so let's go back to the search. Let's look at a somewhat similar example. Before I do that, I just want to point out that you do also want to be on the lookout for records with multiple ISBNs that have the book record, the large print record, the audiobook record, all these different formats all together. You would never select one of those records either. I don't have an example of that one, but that would not clearly be a record that you would select because we don't catalog the large prints with the audiobooks and the books all in one. Those would have to have separate records. So you wouldn't select that record in that case. You do come across them every once in a while. So that's just a heads up for that. If we search this ISBN, we're going to look at an example of where you would not select a record, not only because of the multiple ISBNs. So let's look at this top record. This one has multiple ISBNs, but in this case, they're not different editions of the same title. They're actually different volumes of the same title. So this is volume 1, 2, and 3, all on one record. You can see here in the 008, it's got M for multiple ISBNs and multiple editions or volumes. In this case, it has the 9999 indicating that the record is an open entry, what we call an open entry. So another indicator of that is here in the 264 field, and there's actually 264 fields. The 2022 has a dash next to it, indicating that it goes on into the future until the volumes are complete until they close out the series. And in this case, it's here as well, the copyright information. So it's indicating to you that this is an open entry. You can see here that it says volumes instead of a specific volumes pagination. This is not a record that we would add, even though it might be very complete. It has subject headings, it has all the required fields. This is not a record that we would add because we do not catalog this way. We catalog each individual volume separately so that when patrons place a request, they get only that volume and they don't get one random volume from the series. You would not select this record in this case. You'd go back to the search results, and if the ISBN you had searched was volume 1, for example, you would pick one of these records. This capitalized one doesn't look that good. This second one here is already in BRG, so you would search Polaris first to make sure if it was in Polaris, and then this fourth record is actually incomplete because we only have a 655 field. No 650s, 651s, or 600s to indicate the subject headings that are required. So we can go back to the search and do an example here of an advanced search. So if you don't have an ISBN for whatever reason, you can't find it on the item, it didn't come with it, you're just not seeing it initially, you can do an advanced search for a title. You can change standard number to title. In this case, my example is Freddy's Amazing Bakery. And you can specify that you want the date. If you know the publication date, of course, you can limit it a little bit just in case there's multiple titles. You can put the date in to limit it a little bit and click search. In this case, since I don't have that unique identifier, I'm going to get whatever came out that year with that title. So I am getting a sound disc here. And if I actually have a book in hand, I don't want to look at the record for the sound disc, of course. So I'm also getting a record here with this title, The Great Raspberry Mix-Up. And then I'm getting titles that don't have Freddy's Amazing Bakery in them, probably because it's somewhere in the series information or listed somewhere else in the record as a title field. So I'm going to click the second option on the list, and it looks like a very complete record. It looks good. I might think that I could save this record to the catalog. But if you'll notice here at the top, there is no 0 to 0 field. There's no ISBN in this record. So we would actually send this back to you if you selected this record, and we would ask you to provide the ISBN for the item, because we do not catalog anything unless it is a very old item that does not have an ISBN, in which case we can communicate with you and ask you for images of the item, of the title page, and the verso, so we can see the publication information without needing the ISBN to get it for us. That would be the only case where we would have something without an ISBN or a UPC. So we would not add this record. If we go back to the search results, you can see there's a record here that has LC. As Yumi said, LC and PCC are good indicators of a good record. So we could click on this record, and you notice this one does have the 0 to 0 field. So that's great. And the reason this was coming up when I searched for Freddy's Amazing Bakery is because that is the series title. So that'll still come up. It's part of a series. So this is a this would be a good record to choose if you were to choose this record. And we'll go back yet again to the search results and look at the fourth record. This one is not going to be the record to choose, because even though it has the ISBN, this one at the bottom here, you can see only has 655s. That is not enough for a complete record. That's only a genre. Children's stories is very generic. That's not enough to describe this item for us. So we'll go back to the search field, and we have only a few more examples. What about when your record is a complete record and is still rejected? Well, there's two reasons why that could be the case. You can see here when we search this ISBN, we have several options. We're going to skip the online resource options. So there's 3 of those there. This first one looks incomplete just from looking at it. It doesn't have the in the beginning. So it's probably not going to be the most complete record, I can check it, but I don't need to. I'll move on because I see right away that there's a PCC record, and that's the one that I probably want to choose because, as Yumi said, those are the more complete records usually. So I'm going to go to this PCC record and click it. And as you can see here, there are two indications that this is not going to be accepted here in the 008 field and here in the 264 field. This is a nonfiction title, and it's published in 2017, which is more than 5 years ago. This would not be accepted as per policy because we don't accept nonfiction that's over 5 years old and older. So we would be sending this back. So in this case, rather than send it to us, have us send it back and waste a little bit of time doing that, you might as well fill out the justification form right from the get-go and send this to us using the justification form so we can add it to the catalog with that required justification in place. If we go back to search, let's look at another example of a record where we would be sending it back to you as well, not based on the completeness of the record, but because of policy. Let's take a look at this record. In this case, this record, you might be able to tell right away, it's self-published, being that the author's name is listed as the publisher in the 264 field. So in this case, you might see author's name, you might see publisher not identified, you might see create space in some cases, but all of those would be cases where it indicates to us that it's self-published, and as per policy, we don't accept self-published materials without justification from the director or the director's designee. So we would send this back to you and you would send it back to us with a justification. So again, you might as well preempt that process and just send it initially with the justification, recognizing now that you've become used to some of those indicators, recognizing that that's a self-published item. Lastly, we've seen a few examples already, but let's look at an example of a complete record so you can see what you're looking for when it's a complete record. Let's do a search here. The first one that I can see here, of course, is online resource. So now we're not going to select that one. We're going to jump right to the second record, and we're going to click that one. You can see here at the top, again, not something you're going to be required to look at, but you can see here that there's no X's and slashes and unknown fields there. That looks good to us as catalogers, of course. You can skip down to see, yes, there's an ISBN present. That's perfect. Let's keep on moving down to the 100 field. That's present. Again, as Kirsten said, you don't have to have a 100 field. You can sometimes have an editor and they're not considered the author, so they're not the main entry. They're in the 700s field. In this case, this one has a 700 and a 100. So both are not required, but you're going to need one of them to be present in the record for it to be a complete record. The 245 is present. It has the subfield C here with the author's information. It has the 264 with the publication information. It even has the copyright information and an additional 264 field. It has the 300 field, and the 300 field is filled out completely, which is nice, but not required. At least it has the 300 field present. It has all the 3XX fields that we need. Again, not something you would normally be looking for, but is something we look for as catalogers. The 500 fields are an added bonus. They are not required, but they are nice to have, so that's even better for this record. But one of the most important things here is that this does have 650s and 600s for subject headings, and they have that 0 as their second indicator. So they are Library of Congress subject headings, and there's enough of them that it's a very complete record. Now, Kirsten might have mentioned you don't need multiple subject headings. One is actually enough for you to consider it a complete record, but it's nice to have more than one when you're describing an item. So you can ignore these 650s because they have the second indicator 6, of course. These are not Library of Congress subject headings. As I mentioned before, it does have that 700 for that additional author. but a 700 is not required. It just happens to be here in this case since there's 2 authors. So in this case, this would be a very complete record. This is a good example of a record that we would add to the catalog for sure. But in this case, it does have BRG holdings at the top, so that tells you that it's either already in Polaris or it's going to be in Polaris soon because somebody just selected it today. So one more thing I want to add that Yumi did point out, when I do, she had it on her slides, but I do just want to point out, in this case, I'm checking if this is in BRG because it said BRG holdings at the top, and yes, it is in BRG, so it's in our catalog. I'm not going to select this record if it's already in our catalog. But one thing I just want to point out I'm doing here, I am using a keyword ISBN search. I'm not using all keyword search for the ISBN field. And that is because if this record, in this case, only had a 10-digit ISBN, I would not find it if I was scanning in a 13-digit ISBN. The only way you're going to find all types of records, no matter what you scan in, is if you do an ISBN search here. So this search guy should be ISBN and then keyword, and then you're going to be able to find any type of record. And I'm saying that because some of our older records, if you're adding a replacement book and it's a little bit older, or if you're just adding something that's a little bit older now to your catalog, for whatever reason, you're not going to find some of those older records because they only have the 10-digit ISBN in them, not the 13 digits. So we sometimes get tickets from people saying this isn't in the catalog, or we get people selecting Cat Express records for things that already are in the catalog because they're not searching correctly and they're not finding the records that are in the catalog. So do make your searches in Polaris before you search Cat Express and use ISBN as your search. That is all I have for a complete record and incomplete records. The last thing you're going to do, if you were to export this record, and I say export, but I don't mean export, if you were to save this record to the catalog, is you would not put an X in front of export. Ignore me when I say export. You're going to save to the catalog. So you're going to click this save to catalog button on the right, and then you would see your record within, like we said, 24 to 48 hours. And if you didn't, you would let us know. You would contact us and we would be able to look into it for you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to have a little bit of time for questions. I see some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to go over to the Q&A and start from the beginning, and we'll just take questions that we got. Okay, so let's go from the beginning. I see. Okay, someone's just saying hello. And then next we have, will all of the slides be shared after this? The answer is yes, they will be. The next question is, when using Cat Express, if it says in BRG, should we not save it to the catalog? Does it mean someone recently sent it? There are 2 options, as we described. I'll just reiterate. If it says in BRG, either someone recently saved it to the catalog, so you wouldn't save it in that case, or it's already in Polaris, and one of 2 options. If it's already in Polaris, either it's an older record and you might be searching by keyword instead of ISBN, so you're not finding it, and it says in BRG on your end because it actually is in Polaris, or there are multiple ISBNs and you're searching one of them, but the one that we have in Polaris is actually the other one. So you would actually use a add ISBN support form instead, and you would ask us to add that ISBN to the existing record in Polaris. The next question is, does the minimum criteria mean a record including all these criteria is guaranteed to be accepted into the catalog, or does it still depend? I would pretty much say it's guaranteed. There are only a few cases I could think of where there are things that, again, we as catalogers know are required for a complete record that we didn't want to confuse you and add to the criteria. Things like the 3XX fields, I mentioned that one record had a 338 and it didn't have a 336 and a 337. That wouldn't be complete, but that wouldn't be something you would necessarily catch. A lot of times though, I want to say that those types of things are usually also accompanied by other errors that would make it incomplete. So it's rare for it to be only incomplete for a reason that only catalogers would catch. So I don't want to say guaranteed, but I want to say almost guaranteed. The next question is, does there need to be more than one 6XX entry, or as long as there is one of those options, it's a good entry? As I mentioned a little bit earlier, you only need one. It's nice to have more, but there only needs to be one as long as it's not a 655. That's a genre and that is not a subject heading. So 6XX, with the exception of 655, only needs to be one of them. Next question is, do any of the criteria change or are expanded for items that are self-published and or indie published? Actually, for items that are self-published, I'll split that up. For items that are self-published, we need the cataloging justification, so you might as well not even, I almost said export, you might as well not even save that record to the catalog. Indie published is, I believe, a little bit different than self-published, as long as it's not self-published, it's going to be the same criteria. It's not going to change for something that's an indie publisher. Next question is there a way to filter out the online resource records from showing up in the search results? Unfortunately, we haven't found a way to do that, but I wish there was a way, because even we as catalogers, when we go on in our cataloging interface, the you know, on our side of things, and we're working in the cataloging world, we don't get online resources filtered out. So we still see them as well. We just have to be used to keeping an eye out for them and knowing what to look for. So unfortunately not for that one. The next question is, if we are saving a record from Record Manager that looks good but has fields in French, would you prefer that we delete those fields before submitting? I'm going to pass that one over to Yumi or Kirsten.
Okay.
Do you mean if it has like 6XX fields in French, like French
I think,
subject
yeah.
headings? Okay, yeah,
you
because a
mean
lot of the
by,
records do
French?
have those. That would be okay. We would just delete them before we import, as long as the other required fields are there.
Can you, yes, just like Kirsten mentioned, can you clarify fields in French? Is it like a mandatory fields or like an extra fields?
I just sent a request to unmute. I don't know if you'll see it, Sarah. If you do see it, you can go ahead and unmute if it worked. I don't know if it worked.
I was just typing. The fields would be like a duplicate field. I imagine it's from a Canadian record. So the field would already be in English, but then I'm remembering as subject fields. Yes.
There's a OCLC project. They added extra language fields, for example, like French and Spanish, with a I think a second indicator, not zero. So those are indicators that if the records has all the subject headings with second indicators, which means Library of Congress subject, and in addition to that, they added all the like French fields and Spanish fields there with a different second indicator, then it's okay. We can clean up. That's the one of the process we do at the batch edit. So you don't need to worry about it.
Okay, so don't worry about it. It seemed that I was giving extra work for you, but okay. Just wanted to be
No, it's
sure.
okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have batch editing does a lot for us, but it's sometimes a little tricky because what you see on your end, you might imagine stays on our end, like that one example we had of where there were 650s with a second indicator 7. You might think that we will see those subject headings, but our batch editing does take all those extraneous details out. things that we don't accept, they're just wiped out. So we don't even see them. So it's nice. I don't have any other questions on my end. So we can wait just a minute or two to see if any more questions come in. But you obviously are welcome to send us support ticket, email us, email cataloging@buckles.org with any and all of your questions at any point.
So in case we have any more questions, while we're waiting, I'll just say a few closing remarks and give people time to type in any questions. So many thanks to Yumi, Margaret, and Kirsten for a great class packed with a lot of information. I'd also like to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy day to attend. Again, if you have any other questions, please type them in the chat box, or you can certainly unmute yourself. You'll be receiving a post email from me, which will include the slides today, the recording, and also an evaluation. If you could please give us your feedback regarding the event. It's especially important because this is our first event, and it also gives you an opportunity to indicate what future training you would like to see. You'll also be receiving an attendance certificate. You should see that probably in a few weeks. And I think that's it. Margaret, I don't know if you see any other questions.
I don't.
Okay.
Just a few thank yous, and you're all very welcome.
Yeah, and let me just add my thanks to everyone. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.